Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Thank you for joining not just me, but us this evening, because I have a very fun and one of my favorite guests back. It is Leah Moler. And hello, Leah.
Hi. Oh man, I get one of your favorite guests. That's like humbling. Hi.
Oh, it was a lot of fun talking to you last time. I wouldn't have you back on if you stunk. No.
I guess that's a good point, right? I take it as a good sign that I'm allowed back.
I think that sure. Let's we'll think that I'm in high esteem. I like that too. So for listeners, Leah actually I followed on Instagram as I went into the Instagram space and went from like just posting pictures of wine and pictures of clouds that I took, and actually started posting about Catholicism. And I just had such a wonderful time following her. You've got some great, very emotionally driven, but really theologically sound posts. I mean, they're wonderful. They're heartfelt, but also theologically sound, which is nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, facts and feelings actually converge, which is nice.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It doesn't happen much on social media these days, I don't think.
No, yeah, there's a lot that doesn't happen on social media, which should, but that's a different conversation.
So I think last time you were on, we talked about conversion stories and evangelizing on social media.
Yeah.
And why not just do something different this time? And we're going to talk about women in the Catholic Church, because I don't know about you, but I've definitely heard anytime I say I'm Catholic or became Catholic to friends, are like, well, what do you think about women in the Catholic Church? Doesn't the Catholic Church hate women and all this?
Yeah.
So, and a strong Catholic woman like yourself, I thought this would be fun to talk about.
Oh, yes. And I mean, I think a lot of it ties into understanding, because a lot of it's pushing against this secular idea of feminism and what it is. So a lot of these misconceptions are based on, in my personal opinion, ideologies that are rooted in a secular understanding of feminism and what it means to be feminine and what it means to be a woman, which I think has gotten, how should I say, skewed in what I believe is true femininity and what feminism really is from a Catholic understanding. And I always hate saying feminism from a Catholic understanding, because a Catholic understanding is feminism.
You shouldn't have to put that qualifier on it.
I shouldn't. And it's funny, I have to put the qualifier on it for both sides of the aisle, for those who are Catholic and for those who are secular, because there's push against that word to be Catholic and to say it on both sides. So I use the qualifier not just for those who ascribe to secular feminism, but I also use that word for those who are Catholic and hate to use the word feminism, or they don't believe they consider themselves a feminist. But I think Catholicism is inherently what it means to be a feminist. But I guess
feminism has become a dirty word. It
has. It's like a loaded word. I think there's these like almost trigger words where people are knee-jerk reactions. Like as soon as you hear the word, what are some really hot topic ones right now, like Black Lives Matter movement, right? There's like an instant like, ooh, you have a feeling about that word. It's either really good or really bad. And you have all these different ideas tied to it. I mean, just saying you're Catholic is almost a loaded word for people. You have this idea, these ideologies attached to it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's true just because you have had experience or you've experienced it a certain way. So I think you really have to understand truly what that word is and what it means, and take it out of the context of your own personal experience, which is hard to do. But I think it's really important if you want to have a productive conversation about what it means to be a feminist and what it means to be Catholic.
So why don't, if you don't mind explaining, because I love this idea that to be a feminist is, or Catholic feminist is to be feminist and vice versa. Why, can you explain what you mean by that?
Oh, yeah. Well, first, I think, should we define feminism? I feel
sure. That's good. Defining terms is important.
So when I refer to feminist, the word feminist, and I specify that as well, because I'm not talking about a secular movement. I am talking about the word itself. The word itself, in its most basic format, is talking about the equality of men and women and the belief in that. Now, equality does not equal the same or identical. That is huge. And that needs to be understood way differently than I think how it traditionally is at the moment. And the reason why I push so hard for the use of the word feminism within the Catholic community is because when we don't use that word, we are essentially telling society as a whole, we're letting secular society have hold of that word. We're letting them keep it. And when we say that, remember what the word means, equality for men and women. Well, I'll tell you right now, secular society is, I think, in so many ways, pushes against the equality of men and women by not recognizing their differences and the equality in their differences. So I hate that secular society seems to have this ironclad grip on that word. I'm you shouldn't be allowed to have it. I'm that is inherent in our belief and understanding of human dignity. I mean, it can go into all of that. So I just push so hard. Don't be afraid to use that word, but understand what it means to use it. Understand that don't let them take it over is what I kind of say. Step into that arena. If there's an arena for fighting for the equality of women, I want the Catholic Church in it too. And I want to be in the fight as well, because I want to argue what I believe, what it really means to fight for women. So that's what I mean by when I say feminism.
That's great. I think it's important. I mean, at the very, one of the first things we hear in the catechism about when God created man and woman, I think the phrase equal personal dignity is used. I was just looking over this the other day. So we have equal dignity, but that does not mean that we are the exact same, and you don't need to be the exact same to have equal dignity.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So what's funny is so with secular feminism, and this is where I'm going to harp on it because I think I need to debunk a lot of the idea of secular feminism and where they stand, and then talk about how we're different. So let's talk about the patriarchy, right? It's a word that Catholics are, the Catholic Church gets coined as the epitome of a patriarchal system. And I guess we need to define patriarchy too, because we so understand what I'm talking about when I say that. It's a word secular feminists will use all day long. Basically, it's the idea of a society or a system that's essentially rigged for the benefit of men or the suppression or the detriment of women, right? It's designed that men are more likely to rise up in it because it's designed to promote masculine qualities and suppress feminine qualities. That's what it is, right? That's, I don't think you're going to find that in a dissertation, but that's my layman's terms of what I understand when we speak of a patriarchal, quote unquote, system. And what's interesting about that is I believe secular feminism has misunderstood equality by trying to insert men into a patriarchal system which promotes masculine qualities, insert women into it, promote the masculine qualities within women to get them to rise up in that system itself. What that does, it's inherently telling women that masculine qualities are more valuable. And that's not true. I always say, if you really want true feminism, a stay-at-home mother is as equal as any CEO, not just a male CEO, even a CEO woman is equal. And because we are devaluing what it means, I think, to be a mother, which the church does an incredible job and has always stood for, for the family and for motherhood and for women and for feminine qualities, and understands the value of them in a way that our society doesn't. So if you really want to turn, quote unquote, the patriarchy on its head, you need to really re-understand and redefine what success is. Because we just keep going in a system, which I admit the system is designed to promote masculine qualities. So it's a systematic thing, but we are approaching it in the wrong way. Instead of, I think women can be CEOs, and they should, and that's awesome. My mom has always worked, in the workplace. She was never a stay-at-home mom. But we just have to re-understand what that value is. My mom is not more valuable because she has masculine, some traditionally considered masculine traits, right? And we also have to define what those are inherently biologically, and also understand what we, intelligence, some people have argued is quote unquote a traditional masculine trait. Well, I have difference of opinion on that, but we need to define too, masculine and feminine traits, and what is traditional and what has been adopted, which is different too.
Yeah. It seems to me too that, say, secular feminists, when they promote these masculine qualities, are promoting the ones that are really usually the worst ones of men. Mm-hmm. These are the weak points. Too. Excuse me. Excuse me. So they're promoting maybe aggressiveness or things that they condemn men for having, but then are applauding women for trying to take on themselves.
Yeah,
so
and then it's
they're encouraging us to be the worst of men.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Why, if you really want to flip it on its head, why don't we start telling men it's okay to be nurturing, right? Which is a traditionally feminine trait, to be patient, to be forgiving, instead of the competitive, assertive, protective, masculine qualities. The thing is though, is they're very different qualities, and we just keep promoting the masculine ones. And that's again what the society in a lot of ways is rigged for. But secular feminism doesn't even understand what it means to be feminine half the time, and understanding the intrinsic value in being a woman. They miss it because they keep trying to fight a system that are trying to fit into a system that inherently doesn't value it the way the church does, by the way.
That's absolutely true. The church, I have been awestruck since becoming Catholic, just how much they talk about the importance of women, the roles of women in the church, mothers, how much, even when we do the community prayers in Mass, how often it is about for women.
Yes, it is. First of all, we have the Blessed Mother. That's unheard of in, other religious institutions worldwide. That you don't really have that. And to have, I think just who she is and that Catholic understanding of who she is so inherently feminist. It's incredible. And that's what just sometimes shocks me, when either Catholics are afraid to say the word, or when secular feminists say, I can't claim it. I'm like, I want to talk to you about that. I'm confused why you think that is. And the thing is, as well, is it's always, secular feminism is always talking about the public arena, right? Women having a place in the public arena, because historically that's true. Women were at home. But again, you're placing that the at home is inherently less valuable than the public sphere. Well, that's not true.
That sounds very anti-feminist.
It does, because you're saying, well, women can do that too. I'm like, and you've probably heard this phrase before. It's like, yeah, but there's also a lot of things that women can do that men can't inherently, and to embrace it. And this isn't also to say to group all women into one small category. We're talking about feminine traits, and women do have different, we're not all the same. there are areas in which we are alike and we're one, and that's why it's great to have the Blessed Mother as an example of a woman of true womanhood, in my opinion. But we are different and unique, and we can have, we can be accountants and we can be CEOs too. I don't think there's many Catholic women. I don't want to overspeak here. I don't think there's many that would say that that's wrong. But the thing is, we can't undervalue the importance of the home and the family and what it means to be a mother. That literally cannot be undervalued. You can't overvalue it either. Like, it's not like, oh, I value moms too much, I need to bring this down a little. That's impossible.
Well, you same thing about the Blessed Mother, that you can't overvalue her.
You can't overvalue her. And the moment you start to think you are overvaluing the family, you are overvaluing the home, and you are overvaluing your mother, we differ on our opinion on what it means to be feminist. and that's what I bring to the table when I have discussions with those who view feminism differently or tell me I can't claim the word.
Right. I think too, it's important, maybe we can spend a little bit of time talking about is the feminine masculine traits. And I would say, because I used to be a secular feminist years ago, that I would have back then countered, well, those traits are only ingrained by the patriarchy. I feel like that's something I probably would have said. So, but then at that point, I feel like you have to step back even further and start talking about natural law.
Yes.
And that men and women are designed differently. They are different because they are designed differently. And there is just two genders. It's just man and woman.
Yes. Right. There's a spectrum, right? Sexuality. Everything's on a spectrum now. Everything's subjective and relative and individualistic. You are who you want to be. You're not made to be anything. You're born and then you make who you want to be. That's traditionally the new idea. Yes,
that is getting very out of hand. I remember actually when I was in college and I was an anthropology major, I think there was only one class where the professor mentioned that there was maybe a tribe or two, indigenous tribe in Africa, that had 3 genders. And I remember at the time, everybody was like, wow, that's crazy. That was that was only 12 years ago. Now, my goodness, things have changed.
Well, and that's the thing. And everything is, it's, if you talk to many secular feminists, if you want to use their language, you have to talk about, you have to kind of explain traditionally feminine traits, traditionally masculine traits. And it's funny, I mean, if you even Google that, just listen, you look at the words. And what's funny is they're different, and there's good and bad, quote unquote, traditional. And I don't like the word traditional. You can say historically used to define I think is maybe a better way to describe it. But we've lost identity in our search to find desperately our identity through everything but Christ. We've completely lost it. And we've searched, and everything is in flux. There's literally nothing that the world is telling you now that you were born to be. It's literally anything you decide you are. And I'm like, that is a disservice. That undervalues my human dignity of who I was when I was born. I was born with inherent human dignity. I was born with inherent biological traits. And those are beautiful, and those should be celebrated, not suppressed. And the problem is, it's a rejection of ourselves. It's rejecting who you were born to be. And that is just, no wonder we have so many, issues, I guess I'm just going to say. I don't know a really good word to describe what I'm trying to convey except for that. But it's just a no wonder. I mean, they're telling you to hate yourself so you can make it into whatever you want it to be, in a way. It's like self-hatred in a way to try and find self-acceptance, which is it's a big oxymoron in my opinion.
And the whole thing, instead of it being rooted in your inherent self-worth given to you by God, it is now bound up in sexual organs, the lack of them, or whichever ones you may want or don't want.
Yeah, it's and it's all of it. And here's the thing too, and I want to be clear for anyone who is listening. If I don't want to say rejected, but your human dignity doesn't go away, even if you rejected how you were born to be, or if you rejected Christ. That human dignity is inherent. You can't get rid of it. Like, it is what it is, and you have value as you are right now, wherever that's at. You have it. You can't get rid of it. So when we talk about this stuff, we're not saying you lose it because you reject something or you don't like something about yourself. That's not true. We also, predisposed to sin, but I still have an inherent human dignity despite any of my sins. And that's the part that it's sometimes that's a hard message to convey without a deeper understanding. And I just think it can be hard.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Man, we've covered a lot of ground already.
I know we have, and I could talk so much.
This is good.
I could talk so much about any of it. And, a lot of those subjects too, human sexuality can be a whole different, it ties into the idea of feminism, and it ties into the culture a lot. But in general, that can be a whole other podcast.
Yeah. I think so.
of human sexuality. And it's so funny, this whole conversation reminds me of, shockingly, Scott Hahn.
Well, I was waiting for that.
I was waiting for this. Yes. And for those listening, I absolutely love Scott Hahn. If you seen any of my posts, you're like, Leah, we know. But The First Society, his book, The First Society, he talks about that. He talks about how we are, traditionally identity forming institutions have kind of withered away. We don't really have those anymore, such as the church. We have the church, but it's not, part of the public sphere as it once was. And how that has degraded the family and understanding marriage. And I think, in understanding Catholic feminism, you can't, bringing marriage and the family, as we harped on before, but I think it's important to bring it back. You can't lose sight of that importance. And I don't know, sometimes it's just mind-boggling to me that the idea of secular feminism, and I keep saying secular feminism because it's not feminism, it's secular feminism. And I will say that to the end of this podcast. Good.
Take back that word.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want. And when I talk to Catholics, and I talk to so many that are like, I just can't bring myself to use that word. And I'm like, why? Well, it always has to do with a personal experience of someone else who claimed that word. Well, take it back. We want to take back the word marriage, don't we? I think we're trying really hard to take that back. Why can't we take this word? I want this word too. I want marriage and what is the sacrament of what that means. And I also want the word feminism, because I think we've got a pretty good claim to both. And we should. So I just tell people, and I also think there's also a fear to use the word because maybe you don't feel adequate to defend it against the more traditional or the more I'm sorry, that's my dog. Want to take back that word. What was I saying? If you're talking with a friend or you're saying I'm a feminist, right? And it's one who is a secular feminist, and you say that, and you say you're Catholic. Maybe you don't feel adequate enough to maybe defend it, and so you don't want to get into it. So you're just like, fine, you're a feminist, I'm not.
Yeah.
And I get that too. However, I'm just going to challenge and say that's not a good enough reason. I think you need to understand it better. I think if we're going to talk about Catholicism and feminism, the idea that women can't be ordained as priests always gets brought up.
Yep.
And that's like the sure telltale sign that it's a patriarchal system that suppresses women. Well, I get that. And I'll be honest with you, I get that. And I was like you, I was a secular feminist before. I definitely claimed it. And it sometimes is hard, but we have to go back to that equal isn't the same. And that's, we have to really understand that, and the value of and the role of women within the church. Now I know I've also heard, the arguments. It's like, well, the priests, though, they have control of like the sacraments, which is the blood of the church. I mean, that's big, right? We can't undervalue the sacraments. However, we forget, marriage is a sacrament. And you're very much in that, although the priest performs them. But I think we just have to go back to understanding that equal does not mean the same. And the more we start to understand that, and I think, again, always looking at the Blessed Mother as a wonderful example of that, can help reconcile that. Even though I'm not saying that if you're listening, you're like, I just have a hard time with it. I get it. And I get that I just think we need to pull ourselves out of secular understanding of the word. Pull yourself out of that. Redefine it. Redefine it in the Catholic understanding of everything, of human dignity, of the worldview of being Catholic. And I think you'll find that it's not quite, as hard of a pill to swallow. And I also think you just have to also understand what the church is and what it means to be Catholic. Because the truth is, I believe it's a divine institution protected by the Holy Spirit, and I trust it.
Yeah.
So you kind of do have to go back to that too.
Yeah. I think especially when it comes up with why women can't be ordained. I mean, you got to look who founded the Catholic Church, who picked the first disciples. Yeah. Was Jesus having a bad day? Did he mean to say, Mary Magdalene? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean you, James. I meant her. Yeah, I'm just having a hard time speaking today. No, yeah. I mean, he did it was purposeful, and Christ could have done anything he wanted. So even though it was a more outwardly male-dominated society that he was moving through at the time. But even still, I mean, if you look back at judges in the Old Testament, I mean, there are very strong women.
There are
very strong women. So, but Christ set it up in a way that, a lot of the times, it was the women who understood Christ more quickly than the men did. Mm-hmm. He showed himself to them first, or they were the ones that saw that, he had risen first. So it's amazing to me, like, maybe it's that women have a different connection to the church, and men have a different connection. And just because it's different doesn't mean that it's not equally good, even Absolutely. Though it's not equal in practice.
Absolutely. And I think, one thing that we sometimes forget, people love to use historical examples to take down the church all the time. I mean, come on now. I mean, I could name 10,000 Catholic Church atrocities throughout history. Like, I'm not blind to that, and we aren't, and it's not ignoring that. But we have to understand what we're talking about when we talk about the institution in the church and its teachings and its dogma, versus things that happen under like the political institution in the secular world with the Catholic name. Maybe that's not the best way to describe it, but
I think I don't know who said it, but I know my husband likes to say it a lot. Is that the church is not a hotel for saints; it's a hospital for sinners, and it has been corrupted since Judas. So
absolutely, it's a man. Say different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember I've actually had a couple followers. So I love St. Thomas Aquinas, and when I say I love St. Thomas Aquinas, I love what he contributed to the church. I think what he has contributed in his 5 ways are so profound. Philosophers to this day can't debunk them. And by the way, if anyone tells you different, come talk to me, because I think that is not true.
That's probably not true.
No, it's not. Right. And we're talking about someone, hundreds of years ago. And that contribution, I think, is just so unparalleled. I have a deep and profound respect for him. However, I've had followers who I'm open about that. I love St. Thomas Aquinas. She was like, well, I struggle. How can you reconcile loving him and loving St. Thomas Aquinas when he was with the things he said about women and his really sexist remarks? And so I kind of had to go into, well, you have to understand when I say, I love what he contributed to the church. I love that, what his inspiration that he was given, I believe was, unparalleled and divine. And he's contributed to many, many people's faith in what he has done. I do not ever claim that he was perfect. And we can't ever forget historical context. Not that historical context is a excuse necessarily, but we come at things with such a modern mind sometimes. We look at, we live in a completely different world than St. Thomas Aquinas. Let's be clear about that. I'm not excusing things he said about women. And I don't know, if he saw me, he'd be like, well, you're a woman, you're an idiot. And I'd be like, okay, we can differ on that opinion, but that doesn't take away what he contributed. It doesn't excuse things, but it doesn't take away from his contributions. And I think, and I admit sometimes it's hard for me to personally reconcile. So I'm not going to act like, oh, I have, I love hearing old saints saying sexist things about women. Like, I don't love hearing that stuff. And it is hard, but I think you just have to, it's understanding what the church is and what it isn't. You have to understand historical context in the time period. Secular, the word feminism didn't really exist. That's a modern concept, even though I believe it's an ancient idea within the church inherently, but that's a different thing. So I think it's just a different understanding. And just being able to reconcile that, which again, I just have to own, it takes a little bit of thinking and sometimes it's hard to accept. And I get that. So if you're listening and you're like, I'm having a hard time with this, that's okay. I get it, but I challenge you to really dig deeper into it.
Yeah. Speaking of saints, it's also important to remember that saints were not perfect in their lives. So usually were, they kept pursuing Christ and wound up with pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
And also saints, women, there's thousands of saints, and many of them are women, and men in the church venerate them. Yes.
And that's where we as Catholics have such a unique opportunity and a unique understanding of, JP2, right? The genius of women, the feminine genius. And so we have such a unique opportunity in our faith to be able to recognize the diversity of women. I mean, the diversity of the women saints. Come on now. You just have to look at them to realize what it means to be feminine and Catholic and God-fearing and Christ-loving is very diverse. We don't have to fit into one small box either. And that's another thing that I think secular feminism likes to kind of tell women who are Catholic or maybe even just religious, is like, well, they're putting you into a box. I'm like, that's an oxymoron. You're telling me because I'm a woman and I'm Catholic that I can't think. Again, that is like the most anti-feminist comment you could possibly make. I am Catholic, I'm a woman, I'm intelligent, and I'm a feminist. None of those are oxymorons. Like, let me be clear about that. I'm free thinking too. It's like shocking. But I just always feel like, you look at the saints and really study the church. And I think the more you look at everything on a broader scope, because sometimes I think we can get blinders on and focus on like one little area. You have to understand how long the church has been around, how deep church teaching goes, theologically, philosophically, historically. When you start to take that all into account, I mean, women rise to the top real quick when you start to look at it in that big picture. They do. When you look at it over that, it's incredible. And I would argue that there's very few institutions that are 2,000 years old that can tell you that. I don't think there's any, honestly, in the way that the church has, which is just incredible to me on many levels and speaks to the universality of the church, and that it's founded by Christ, because that's what I would expect from Christ's church.
That's right. A little while ago, just for grins, we were Googling who started each church, and Google got, it's who started the Baptist Church, it was John Smith who started Lutheranism, Luther, Martin Luther, and it says who started the Catholic Church, and it said Jesus Christ. So Google got it right.
That's hilarious. Oh, I'm going to use that.
But there's one quote from Fulton Sheen that I love, and anytime anybody says that the Catholic Church is against women or against and who else, gays, anything, whatever the Catholic Church is against, this Fulton Sheen quote always comes to mind. There are not 100 people in the United States who hate the Catholic Church, but there are millions who hate what they wrongly perceive the Catholic Church to be.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
The Catholic Church loves women.
Yes, they do love women, and they love women more uniquely and more deeply, and more purely than I feel. I mean, I can't name another institution that does. And I would love to hear it. I love hearing, some institutions that claim it. I won't name it here because those will be knee-jerk reactions, and I don't want to get those from people. But anyways, I have some choice words for many of them that claim that this is a feminist institution. I want to have deep discussions. I'll just say it that way. I'll just say it that way about that topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this whole topic of, and I definitely fell into the camp of thinking just there's a blanket, the Catholic Church, it's patriarchal, and then anything that has to do with scandals over the years, that wraps it up. Thanks, no thanks. But it is true, and you said it earlier, that secular feminists do try very hard to put every woman and man in a box. Mm-hmm. Men are inherently evil. Mm-hmm. Especially white men are inherently evil. And women who, if you do not vote a certain way or hold certain views, you are the enemy as well. You should just hand in your woman card. I don't know what they expect you to do if you're not a woman, but hand in that card. So they really do put you in this box and promote, again, the least desirable, or not the least, but maybe the less noble traits of men. Mm-hmm. And trying to parade that as being equals if we take those on. Yeah.
Let's put it this way. Being a jerk in the workplace to be a CEO is not applaudable for a man nor for a woman. Just because it makes you the CEO doesn't mean that you have conquered the patriarchy, and I'm proud of you. I hate to say it, but it's true. And that's because our goal, right, is sainthood, right? It's heaven. And we don't forget that. Our goal isn't just to be a CEO. So that's another thing too, is we have to understand, what's our purpose in life? And it goes back to that too. Having a lot of money and that's not the goal. And so that can get lost in translation as well. And I also feel like as we're talking, I can see old secular feminism, Leah, being like, well, you're grouping secular feminists into a group. And I can see them saying that. And I get that. And I get that maybe there's some things you do agree with what I'm saying, and there may be some things that you disagree with what I'm saying. And, maybe you're just kind of yes on some, no on others. And so when we say secular feminism, I'm not perfectly and accurately describing you. I get that. And I get that I'm speaking in somewhat generalizations. And just like I don't like people speaking in generalizations about Catholics, except that there are principles there that are inherently, absolutely, truthfully Catholic, that aren't changeable. So in that way, it's not that much up for discussion. But I get that. And I would just say to that, that's fine if you don't check all those boxes of the secular feminist that I'm describing. Not knocking you for that. I have to speak in generalizations in order to make it clear how Catholic feminism differs from some stereotypical, traditionally recognized feminist traits in the secular arena. That's probably the best way I can describe it.
It is very diplomatic and academic sounding.
Was that the most like politically correct way I could say?
Yeah,
that?
maybe. And it's usually, the ones that are shouting the loudest in the media, I think that sums them up. So it's not really generalizations of maybe all of them, but the ones that are the loudest and causing the most discord and dysfunction in society, I think you're right on.
Yeah, so I'm pushing against the overarching stereotype because, and I'll say, you can probably tell by a lot of what I'm talking to, I'm speaking a lot to Catholics themselves, because I'm really would love to hear more Catholic women use the word, truthfully. And this is why I'm trying to debunk a misunderstanding of feminism that we have just let the secular society take and run with and own. Like, just don't let them own it. They don't deserve it. So stop letting them say it. Don't be like, I'm feminist, but say, no, I'm feminist. And then when you get in a conversation and they find out you're Catholic, they're like, wait, what? I'm like, exactly.
Mind blown.
Exactly. And I don't mind it. I'm not putting a qualifier after it because I believe in the equality of women. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We just have a different understanding of what that means.
Yeah. I was listening to, I don't know if you ever have listened to the podcast, The Patrick Coffin Show. He's a great Catholic radio or podcast host, and he's a real joy to listen to. But he actually had, of all people, Milo Yiannopoulos on a while back, and I was listening to that interview, and I was very impressed because Milo, he's been a bit polemic, to say the least.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But he made that point about taking back words. And this was more for I think more for LGBTQI. I know it goes up a lot, but that community. And he's saying, take back the icon of a rainbow, or don't let them have don't let people who are taking this and owning that image or that word fight for it and use it unapologetically. Yeah. So I think I love it. I think you've opened my eyes, because I've been a little gun shy about using that word as with feminism as well over the years, because I knew who I was when I was last using it.
I was too. I was just with you. I went to a really liberal university. I took classes on human sexuality, and tons of them that talked about the spectrum and how we're non-binary and understanding. I went through transgender training. I get it, and I was on that side. If you can't tell, I'm not necessarily gun shy about the word now. I would say, it's not the basis of like my Instagram platform. There are some other awesome platforms that's definitely more their basis. So it's not something I like talk about a ton. However, it's a topic that I don't shy away from, that's for sure. And love having conversations about it. But again, to really go deep into someone who has just a different worldview, you have to have a conversation about what the church is, first of all. Because again, I think that's the truth with anything with the church, right? People will just throw out historical events, historical atrocities, and say they won and call it a day. I'm like, hold up. Let's take a step back here and really understand what it is, what the church is. So it starts with a basis of understanding of what it means to be Catholic, and then you can have generally more productive conversation after that point.
I think that's something that we all need to work towards then, is getting that foundational understanding of just what it means to be Catholic.
Yeah.
And then from there, because as soon as you understand and you go back to those beginning points, it all falls into place, and you don't have to fight so hard over things that you used to think were true when you were more secular than you are now, or it all really falls into line once you understand who created the Catholic Church and what it was created to be. It all makes much more sense.
Yeah, now that is what my platform is about right there, right? Is talking about what it means to be Catholic and understanding that deeply, because then I think a lot of these other topics are easier to discuss. But yeah, so this is totally off topic, but when you're talking about interviews and stuff like that, and I've talked to you about my love for Scott Hahn. Have you seen the interview with Bishop Barron and Ben Shapiro.
We're just listening to that.
I don't think I've ever nerded out more in my life. Like I was like I literally think I was like smiling and giddy. And I will tell you, Bishop Barron, I think, is pretty much tied with Scott Hahn after that interview. And I've always loved him, but I don't think I've seen something quite as like almost just beautifully, poetically, apologetically nerdy. And I was like, this is everything I've ever wanted to see in an interview. I loved it so much, and I had to bring it up.
Do you listen to the Word on Fire podcast?
I have. I don't listen to it like on a regular basis, but I've listened to podcasts like Word on Fire podcasts.
Well, now you got so much to catch up on.
I know. There's so many things I'm playing catch up in the Catholic realm. I can't keep up. Like, and everyone, you know, on my platform will always send me like, you have to like listen to this and read this. And like, I mean, I'm reading 4 books right now, and I'm like, I can't even keep up with my books that I have. I have like a line of books that I'm just ready to keep reading. And then podcasts, I can't keep up. But I love it. I love that I can't keep up. But yes, that interview was it was everything and I've ever wanted an interview to be.
Yeah. I don't know if you listened to the one that he kind of came on in response of,
oh, really?
The previous, I can't think of, oh geez, I really should know this because we were talking about it. It was an evangelical Calvinist minister who was on before.
Oh, I didn't see that, but yeah, I remember him mentioning that and talking about that. Yes.
Yeah, that one. There were some things, and it's the man is, I can't think of his name right now, but he was very intelligent. I agreed with him on some things, and then he went into church history. And this is my husband and I were driving with our 3 kids in the back. It was nighttime and snowing when we were just driving back from Minneapolis to Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. And I was already a little stressed anyway as we were listening, because I needed new front tires, and it was like a stressful drive. It's snowing. Yeah. Things are not feeling like they're gripping, and I'm listening to this guy start getting into church history, and I was just like, we're gonna have to turn this off now, because I'm just angry. This is not a time to be angry. But he's got it so wrong, and
gosh. That's like, there's, you know, we talked about trigger words right in the beginning. Yeah. There's just certain things that I had posted something. I'd posted on my Instagram because I like to listen to apologetic lectures. I'm really, really exciting, I know, but I listen to them in the notes. Sometimes they'll do like handouts or examples of, you know, some traditionally pretty much hateful Catholic handouts, you know, that people can hand out on the street, and it's just like, you're going to hell if you're a Catholic, here's why. Misquoting scripture all up and down, like, check yes or no if you love Jesus. If you do, you know, leave the church, that kind of stuff. I posted that because I got so heated just with how absolutely wrong, like, everything in this was. And I had a follower message me. She goes, as a convert myself, she goes, this is extremely triggering. She goes, I'm so mad. I said, that's exactly how I felt when I read it. Like, I was so heated. And obviously the appropriate thing to do is when you're heated about something, you know, post it on your social media.
Of
clearly.
Course, yeah.
that's obviously the appropriate way to handle it. But I did anyways. And it was funny when she said that, I was like, okay, at least I feel less crazy, because I do. I sometimes get so heated. I'm like, all right, Leah, take a deep breath, step back. You know, and then I get other messages from people. They're like, just pray for them. I'm like, oh, I've prayed. I've prayed real hard.
Very forcefully pray for them.
And you know, it's, you know, he learned to have patience. I think it comes with the territory in a lot of areas. I think being Catholic, you have to learn to have patience and know when to stand up and when to back down. But it's when you just said you get heated in the interview, I totally get that. Like, you just turn it off. Like, I can't listen to this anymore.
Yeah, it's so funny because not very long ago, I would have probably never listened to an interview like that before. And even if I had, I'd be like, well, he's probably right. That church, you know. But so coming back full circle really quickly, because that reminds me, a friend of mine is a Protestant, a non-denominational Protestant. Okay. And she is lamenting the lack of, it feels overtly masculine, like there's a femininity missing in her church. And I was like, well, of course, you're missing Mary. missing true feminism
Yeah.
in your church. Without
Interesting.
that understanding. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I'm going to try to rope her into a talk sometime soon about all this, and maybe we can help her better understand.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And, you know, it's one of those, is like the chicken or the egg, right? Is Mary a product of the church, you know, or vice versa? Because, I mean, I think Mary exemplifies what the church is in a way, and what feminism is. I don't know. I'm thinking through this in my head how I wanted to say this, but it was making me think, like, you know, is the femininity that is embodied in Mary, did the church inherit that from Mary, or is Mary reflective of the church? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't wording that very
then that's
profoundly, but
that's a good thing to ponder on.
it is food for thought.
Yes, food for thought. And actually, you know what? Let's listeners, why don't you think about that? We'll leave that to you. Yeah. So, Leah, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this, and I know that you're busy with life in general. But,
Yeah.
That's that pesky life. So I will put in the show notes where to find you, but lifeisleahknows.com, right? Is your website?
It is. And Life is Leah Knows is my Instagram too. Exactly how it sounds.
And I'll spell your name correctly this time. I think I threw in a couple extra consonants last time, but
no worries. I'm one of the Leahs. It's really all you need to know.
That's it. I'm going, you know, God willing, I'll be confirmed. I'm not even confirmed yet, but it should be Pentecost this year or next year.
Yes.
And then,
so exciting.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm you know, kind of sort of getting into crunch time of which confirmation name I'm going to pick. I think I know, but I already have 4 names. I hyphenated my last name, so I have my name already takes up 2 full lines of my Social Security card. Now I'm going in for a 5th.
I love it.
And my goodness.
My gosh. If I like crash your confirmation, I may be there with it'll be so exciting. I love it.
Well, you know, if you've never been to the cathedral in Philadelphia, it is beautiful.
I haven't. So now I have a good excuse. I love it.
I've only been once, and that was for my husband's confirmation earlier this year.
Oh,
it is very beautiful.
It's so exciting.
It is exciting. I think I know the name I'm going to pick, but there's so many. And I was talking with somebody else, Katie Bogner, was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and she just always like, Christina, I don't even know how I would pick now if I were you, knowing all the saints that she knows.
It's true. I picked mine. I literally picked mine because I just liked her name. I got overwhelmed. And I had so many saint books. Like my mother-in-law, or my future soon-to-be mother-in-law, gave me this giant book, The Thousand Saints. My sponsor gave me a book with all the saints. And I just got to the point, I just picked one. Saint Rose of Lima is my confirmation
that's nice.
saint. It is. It's a pretty name, right? Yeah. I was like, I like that. What was so funny is this year, actually, I found out for the first time that we actually share a birthday.
Oh, no kidding.
Which is kind of crazy. I was like, oh, well, maybe I was supposed to pick her. I would say I'm still, besides that connection, I wouldn't say I have this deep connection to her other than that she's my confirmation saint and we share a birthday. But I don't think that I have a feeling there's a place for her in my life. And, you know, I've heard this from tons of people, right? That sometimes you don't realize it till later on. But it is crazy that we do share an exact birthday.
That is really interesting. And, you know, to go back to Bishop Barron, he did say once, pick a saint just to study or learn more about, you know, pick a saint that you really gravitate towards. So say maybe St. Thomas Aquinas, you really gravitate towards him, and then pick a saint that you really don't have much in common with, and study them and get to know them better.
Yeah.
But maybe that's St. Rose of Lima for you for now.
Yeah, and I've learned bits and pieces thanks to the wonderful Catholic Instagram community. Everyone loves St. Rose of Lima because of all the flowers. And so I see her stuff everywhere, and people will post this and think, oh, I'm learning more about her. So yeah, I have actually, it's part of my goals for next year is I do want to learn more about the lives of specific saints. You know, I've done a lot of more theological, philosophical stuff this year, but it would be nice. I think I'm playing huge catch up on actually truly learning, the lives of the saints, which I want to learn more about this year.
That's great. And the Catholic community on Instagram does such a great job of promoting liturgical living.
Oh my gosh.
That I've learned even this Advent, I was like, I had no idea. Embertide. I didn't even know what that was until today or yesterday.
Oh my gosh. There's so many things I've learned from the Catholic Instagram community. Like my husband who grew up Catholic. And I was like, and this is going to sound so terrible, but I'm just going to own it. Like some of the holy days of obligation, like I should know them. But like, thank goodness Instagram was like, don't forget, go to mass. I'm like, oh crap. Yeah, I got to go to mass today. And I'm like calling my husband. I'm like, hey, today we got to go. And he was like, it is. I said, yes, according to Instagram, we have to go to mass today. According to Instagram. I'm going to be, but it's good though. It's actually really good accountability and it's good. I'm like, I need to be better about this. So now I have like a more liturgical calendar where I'm actually going to try and keep track myself. Yes. Instagram for that. I have a New Year's resolution too that we will be better about.
I like that. I like that.
Liturgical days.
Most of everything because of the Catholic community, besides teaching me more about Catholicism, I've spent a lot of money because so many the women make such beautiful things and I keep buying them.
They do. I have no idea how many things come in the mail now. And my husband's like, where did you get this? I'm like, it's my friend on Instagram. He goes, Leah. I said, but look how beautiful it is. I mean, like I have necklaces from beautiful shops. I have, my mass journal now. I mean, I have everything. I'm a sucker for it. So, hey, if you have a Catholic shop and have some awesome stuff, I'm a total sucker for all of it.
Yep.
Our house is becoming more and more Catholic.
As it should. Make people know who lives there when they walk in.
Yeah, clearly, like if I'm not outspoken enough, you can come to my house and you can see it all, which I love. I mean, I love it. It's been great. So, I even had to place my my Advent wreath with my candles. I had to place them like in a perfect spot so I could get good Instagram pictures. So like everyone apparently posts pictures of them. So he was like, really? And I was like, well, I mean, everyone else is posting them. Yeah. I was like,
if everybody else is doing it,
people aren't going to think I know it's Advent.
Well, it brings us all together. Like it brought us, and now we get to do this great podcast. So, Leah, thank you again for taking some time out. I know it's a busy season, besides Advent and Christmas and all that. So, thank you very much. And again, I'll put show notes of where to find you.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. Have a wonderful Christmas.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I say this, I'm going to wait because I usually put out podcasts on Tuesdays and it's Christmas and New Year's Day. So I'm not going to, I'll just do a little podcast by myself because I don't want this one to get buried. So it might still be Christmas season technically in the Catholic Church when I do this in January.
Yeah, just ask Catholic Instagram. They'll tell you.
They'll know. I think it's January 13th. I've got until then. And I can still say Merry Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Leah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a good time.
Of course. All right. And thank you everyone for listening. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT.